The movie opens in a Japanese city, where a truck full of prisoners is being taken to one of Japan's most dangerous prisons. Inside the truck, several inmates sit silently, among them a young man named Riki. Riki has been sentenced to 10 years in prison for killing a man. However, it was clear that the murder charge against him was lighter than usual. There was more to the story. When the prisoners arrive at the prison, they are taken out of the truck one by one. Riki is made to stand before a scanning machine to check if he's carrying anything, but the device keeps showing that there's metal inside his body. The guards search him thoroughly, but they don't find anything. Suspicious, they decide to run a special X-ray scan. When the X-ray is displayed, everyone is shocked. Riki's body is filled with bullets. The guards can't believe how a man could still be alive with so many bullets inside him. Their curiosity grows even more when Riki calmly says, "I've kept them as memories, and they'll stay with me as long as I live." It was clear Riki wasn't an ordinary man. He had an incredible tolerance for pain. The guards are stunned by his composure. After this, the new prisoners are escorted to their cells. We then learn that this prison is divided into 4 sections, each controlled by an inmate chosen by the warden himself. These 4 men were leaders of powerful gangs, and everyone referred to them as the Gang of 4. The warden was the most powerful person in the entire prison, and under him was the assistant warden, who managed everything in his absence. The next day, when all the inmates are busy with their daily work, one of the section leader's right-hand men, Samuel, begins harassing an old inmate named Mike for no reason. Mike, a simple and kind man, has no idea why they're beating him. His sentence was almost over. He was just days away from being released. He had even made a small toy out of prison scraps for his little son. When that toy falls from his hand, Samuel picks it up and sneers, saying, "You'll only leave this prison when I allow it." Mike begs him to give it back, but Samuel smashes the toy and injures him with it. Heartbroken, Mike says they're doing the wrong thing, and this enrages Samuel even more. He starts beating Mike brutally. The other inmates just stand and watch in silence. No one dares to help. When the guards arrive, instead of helping Mike, they let Samuel walk away and cover up the entire incident. But as Samuel walks past, Riki quietly sticks out his leg, tripping Samuel right onto a pile of nails. Samuel screams in agony. One of his men tries to attack Riki, but Riki's cold, intense stare terrifies him. They all step back and rush their boss to the doctor. Samuel survives but loses one eye. Furious, he vows to kill Riki. One of his men tells him, "Boss, you don't have to do it yourself. We can get Mad Dragon to handle him." Mad Dragon was one of the most dangerous and violent inmates, a man whose hunger never ended. He was currently being kept in isolation after eating the warden's horse. The next day, Samuel bribes the guards, telling them to release Mad Dragon so he can kill Riki. He also asks them to cancel Mike's release date, ensuring the old man never gets out. The greedy guards agree. Meanwhile, a guard calls Mike to his office and informs him that his early release has been canceled. He'll have to serve the rest of his sentence. Heartbroken, Mike begs for mercy, but no one cares. Instead, they beat him and leave him broken, crushed by the cruelty of the system. All the prisoners were talking about it, how he'd been tortured, and how Samuel had pushed him to take his own life. In truth, Mike was in prison because on the day his wife was giving birth, he accidentally caused a car accident that killed a man. Riki sat quietly in his cell, listening to everything. When the guards carried Mike's body out, Riki stepped forward and said, "He's dead. At least let him rest in peace now." Riki broke the old man's handcuffs and even fixed the toy train Mike had made for his son. But sadly, that little boy would never see his father again. Filled with rage and grief, Riki went out into the storm that night and began to practice kung fu, unleashing his anger with every move. He now understood that to survive in this place, he'd have to fight every single day, or he'd end up just like Mike. The next day, while all the inmates were showering, Samuel approached Riki, staring at him with a strange, menacing look. The guards suddenly ordered everyone else to leave, and soon Riki was alone in the shower block. Moments later, Mad Dragon entered. Before Riki could even react, Mad Dragon hit him with a powerful punch, throwing him across the room. At first, Riki didn't want to fight, but once he realized that Mad Dragon had been sent to kill him, he didn't hold back. He struck a single devastating punch to Mad Dragon's stomach, tearing him open from the inside. Even after witnessing such a gruesome death, Samuel still didn't learn his lesson and tried to attack Riki himself. But Riki grabbed his hand, snapped his fingers, and pulled a nail out of his own palm as if he couldn't even feel the pain. Hearing the screams, the guards rushed in, but it was too late. By the time they arrived, Samuel was already dead. No one dared to stop Riki, but instead of resisting, Riki calmly surrendered to guards. As they were taking him away, the captain of the North Block stopped them. Impressed by Riki's strength, he offered him a place in his gang. Riki refused the offer and walked away. The guards then took Riki to a high-security cell, meant for the most violent inmates. Because of Mad Dragon's earlier punch, the bullets inside Riki's chest had shifted, causing him excruciating excruciating pain, but he ignored it and focused his mind to endure it. Then, the film cuts to a flashback. We see a young Riki back in high school. One day, when he visits his parents' grave, he finds a stranger standing there, paying his respects. That man turns out to be his uncle, John, who had known about Riki's superhuman strength since childhood. He had always been watching over him from afar. John knew that Riki was learning martial arts, so he had come to train him personally to help him become a true fighter. Riki showed him a few of his moves, but when he tried to attack, John knocked him down with a single punch. That's when Riki realized he wasn't ready yet. He begged his uncle to teach him. John agreed and began training him, often taking him to the cemetery at night for practice. He told Riki that true strength comes from mastering both mind and body, and started with meditation. Through meditation, he said, you'll gain power beyond imagination. After days of training, John brought several stones. He broke one in half with a single hand and told Riki, gather all your strength in one place and break it. Riki stepped forward and shattered the stone easily. Even he was surprised by his own strength. Then John began throwing larger stones at him. Riki broke each one effortlessly. Finally, John picked up a huge, thick stone and crushed it against his own chest, showing Riki the ultimate control of body and power. The story returns to the present, and we see Riki, who hadn't slept all night, meditating as John had taught him. The night passed like that, but in the morning some guards wake him and take him to the assistant warden's office. The warden's desk is piled high with food. He has a fake eye and a hook where a hand should be. His name is Cyclops. He tells one of his guards to read Riki's file aloud. After all, any prisoner who causes this much trouble should have a record. The guard begins to read. According to the report, Riki had committed murder.
He's guilty of manslaughter.
He had no family, no one who knew him. The report also said Riki was extremely dangerous and should be kept in maximum security.
Riki-Oh is extremely dangerous.
Every inmate had to reveal their past when they arrived, but Riki's file made no mention of the previous 2 years. Cyclops asked, where were you those 2 years? What did you do? Even after his threats, he couldn't get Riki to speak. Finally, the warden shows Riki a letter that had been sent to him with a photograph of Riki's girlfriend inside. As Riki reached for it, the warden jabbed the hook into his hand and began raining blows down on him. He crushed and tore the picture with his own hands. Seeing that, Riki's anger flared, and he ripped the table in half with his bare hands. The warden was startled and fired his gun. Riki deflected the bullet with his hand. He could have killed the warden, but he didn't. Instead, he took one last warning and walked away with the picture of his girlfriend. That night, Riki sits in his cell, remembering the good days with his girlfriend, Ka-Kui. He takes out a flute and begins to play the tune that always reminded him of her. A guard appears and warns him, if he plays that tune again, the guard will break the flute. The next day, some inmates corner a man, the one who had been leaking information to the guards. They realize he was also involved in the old man's death. The man begs for his life and promises never to do it again, but they're not going to spare him. One of them prepares to dismember him with a woodcutter's axe. At that moment, Narumi arrives. He tells them no one can be killed here without his permission. Andrew, armed and angry, objects completely. He says, Samuel broke the rules and you let him go. Now that this one broke the rules, you'll let him go too. Narumi doesn't like Andrew's tone. He feels disrespected. He removes Andrew from the path. Cyclops watches from a distance. He needs to speak with Narumi, so he calls him into his office, drags Andrew along by the hook in his mouth, and confronts him. Cyclops says, because of Riki, the others have gained courage. If this keeps up, there will be a Riki in every cell. I want you to teach them a lesson. Kill Riki. Once he's out of the way, the rest will fall in line. Narumi understands that killing Riki is beyond him, but the warden gave the order, so he agrees and sets out to do as told. Later, Narumi brings Andrew out to the yard. He ties Andrew to a large cross and leaves him to die publicly as an example, so no one will dare rebel. Narumi then challenges Riki to a fight. Riki is willing to fight, but only on one condition. First, free Andrew. Narumi cannot agree. He has orders from the warden to remove Riki from the path. So Narumi lunges at Riki without hesitation. As the fight begins, he throws shards of crushed glass into Riki's eyes, blinding him. Taking advantage of the moment, Narumi slashes Riki's hand and injures him. Although Riki blocks most of Narumi's blows, Narumi is a powerful fighter, and for a while he seems to be winning. Riki is losing. Riki rips a section of pipe and uses the water to wash the glass out of his eyes. His vision clears. Then the other prisoners start cheering for Riki because they know he's the one standing up and fighting for them. The moment Narumi launches another lethal attack, Riki counterattacks so hard that Narumi's condition collapses. At that instant, the warden arrives and sees the whole scene. He's terrified. Riki tears at the severed tendons in his own hand, ties them together, and somehow fixes his hand. Narumi, defeated, stabs himself in the belly. Riki rushes to save save him, but Narumi betrays him again. He wraps his own intestines around Riki's neck and tries to kill him. Riki delivers a crushing blow that smashes Narumi's skull, and Narumi falls dead. Riki frees Andrew from across and lowers him down. Prisoners crowd around, and for a moment they hope Andrew is still alive, but sadly, he is already dead. Riki turns to the warden and shouts that all the injustice in this prison comes from the warden. It's because of him that innocent men have been killed. The prisoners unite and begin to protest, forming a mob and surrounding Cyclops. Before they can kill him, captains from the other blocks step in and stop them. Those captains then attack the protesting prisoners. Some are killed and others fall back in fear. Among the crowd is one inmate with remarkable agility who could leap. They want Riki to fight him, but Riki refuses. He's shaken because many people have already died because of him. He doesn't want more bloodshed. He lifts Andrew's body onto his shoulder and walks away. Cyclops asks Riki if he will take Narumi's place as the new captain, but Riki gives no answer. He is not a lapdog who obeys the warden's orders. We then see Narumi's young son, Alan, cradling his father's body, devastated by the loss. He hears Riki playing a tune on a leaf and tries to copy the sound but can't. Riki approaches and shows him the right way to play. He apologizes to Alan for what happened to his father. Riki notices Alan has been unusually quiet. On closer inspection, he discovers that someone has cut out the boy's tongue. Riki is horrified. He gives Alan his flute as a gift, a simple instrument Alan can still play even without a tongue. In return, Alan gives Riki some leaves, papaya leaves or similar. Riki asks where Alan got them. Growing them is illegal. Alan then tells Riki the full, dark truth about the prison. Behind these four walls, the captains were running an opium operation. They were farming narcotics inside the prison. Wong-Chuk overhears this conversation from a distance. Now that Riki knows the truth, he's a threat. The three captains hold a meeting and decide what to do. Wong-Chuk summons Alan and tells him that Riki killed his father, that it's time to take revenge. To stir him up, they show Alan Narumi's flayed body and tell him it was Riki who did it. Alan knew Riki wasn't that ruthless. When he refused to obey, Wong flew into a rage and had him killed, then tossed his corpse into the yard like trash. A crowd of prisoners gathered to look. A little later Riki came and, seeing his fruit lying near the body, realized it was Alan. Another innocent life taken. Riki couldn't stand it. He swore he wouldn't spare anyone responsible. Soon a fire alarm blared and chaos erupted through the prison. Wong saw that Riki had burned the entire opium farm to ashes. Years of her work turned to ash. Her fury shot through the roof. She attacked Riki at his weakest spot, the place she called his dead point. This time she was sure he was finished. He writhed in agony as every prisoner watched his death like a spectacle. Still, Riki recovered faster than anyone expected. Wong was stunned. It seemed impossible. Even so, that night they were determined he would die. They drove sharp needles into his body and stitched him up like a sack of flour. Just then an announcement thundered. Anyone not in their cell would be shot. The guards opened fire, aiming only at Riki. Somehow he dodged, made it into a room, but the room began filling with cement. Riki tore through an iron gate and broke free. He even saved Katama's life. The warden was furious to find Riki alive again. Soon the cement hardened on Riki's body, and he crashed down like a stone statue. Cyclops ordered, "Erase all the evidence. The warden arrives tomorrow. I need to be the one to entertain him first. I'll deal with the rest later." The next day, the guards stood in line to welcome the warden. They waited for hours in the blazing sun, growing drowsy. Then a car finally appeared, and everyone snapped to attention. The warden arrived with his lecherous son, who slipped on the red carpet while horsing around. Enraged, the warden demanded to know who laid the carpet. Cyclops immediately grabbed a prisoner, shoved him forward, and lied, "It was him, sir." Without a second thought, the warden gouged that prisoner's eyes out. The warden demanded, "What happened here while I was away?" Cyclops broke into a sweat. He couldn't keep up the lie any longer. He admitted a group of inmates had rebelled, and they'd had to kill some of them. The warden shrugged. "People die here every month. You know we can't get cheaper labor anywhere in the country. Don't let them die of hunger or disease. Keep them alive so they keep working." That was enough for the warden to swallow, until he learned someone had burned his opium crop. He suffered a heart attack on the spot. Cyclops immediately gave him medicine and saved his life. The warden lived, but his anger could only be sated by Riki's death. Riki was still trapped in the cement. When the warden approached, Riki shattered the thick layer of cement, lunged up, and grabbed the warden by the throat. The warden's life was seconds from ending when Katama came running in and kicked Riki hard, sending him sprawling. After that, he locked Riki's hands between the prison bars and beat him mercilessly until Riki was barely conscious. As if that weren't enough, he grabbed Riki's head and squeezed so hard that blood started pouring from his skull. Just before he could crush Riki completely, Riki struck back. He threw a powerful punch to Katama's jaw, smashing it open like a watermelon. Seeing Katama losing, the warden pressed a button, and the entire ceiling of the prison started descending. Riki tried with every ounce of his strength to stop the massive hydraulic press, but he he was too weak. From above, the warden hit him with a 100,000-volt electric shock, further draining his energy. In his obsession with killing Riki, the warden forgot that Katama was still trapped underneath. Realizing he'd been betrayed, Katama decided to help Riki instead. He told him to save himself. Riki somehow escaped, but poor Katama was crushed to death under the hydraulic press. Riki charged forward to finish the warden, but the warden hit another button, sending Riki plunging into a deep pit. The guards dragged him out later, bound him in chains, and presented him before all the inmates. The warden ordered them to bury Riki alive one by one. Some prisoners refused, saying, "We won't help you kill him," and the warden had them shot on the spot. Terrified, the rest were forced to bury Riki in the ground. The warden declared, "We'll dig him up after 7 days. If he's still alive, all his crimes will be forgiven." But it was all a cruel joke. He knew no one could survive 7 days without food or water. They left a small pipe near Riki's mouth so he could breathe, then covered him completely with dirt. Days passed. The inmates whispered among themselves, sure Riki was dead, until faintly from underground they heard a melody. It was Riki, still alive, blowing a tune through the pipe. The prisoners were overjoyed. Nearby, Wong saw this and coldly killed a dog, shoving its liver into the pipe so Riki couldn't get any air. Then a flashback takes us to Riki's past. We see his girlfriend, Keiko. One day, while returning from a library, she saw a group of men doing drugs. She tried to run, but they caught her and dragged her to a hotel. They were about to kill her. When she regained consciousness, terrified of what was about to happen, she escaped and jumped off the rooftop to her death. When Riki learned what had happened, rage consumed him. He went after the drug dealer responsible. The man fired several bullets at Riki, but Riki, unfazed, kept walking forward and killed him. That was his only crime. For that, he was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Back in the present, 7 days had passed. It was time to dig Riki out. Using an excavator, the warden himself supervised the digging. When they checked his pulse, they were stunned. He was still breathing. The warden realized Riki was no ordinary man. Maybe befriending him would be more profitable than killing him. So he had Riki locked up again. Later, when he reviewed Riki's report, he noticed some details were missing, and that made him even more curious about who Riki really was. He asked Riki, "Were you hiding from us? Tell me, or these men will kill you." But no matter how much they tortured him, Riki refused to say a word. Wong realized he wouldn't open his mouth easily, so she ground up some razor blades and shoved them into his mouth, then slapped him again and again. The blades tore through Riki's lips and cheeks until his face was completely covered in blood. Still, Riki didn't break. He endured the pain in silence. Afterward, they threw him back into his cell, where he suffered from hunger and thirst. That night, one prisoner secretly brought him some food. Eating it gave Riki a bit of strength, but one of the prison snitches saw everything and reported it to the guards. Soon, the cyborg guard stormed into that prisoner's cell, killed him brutally, and dragged his corpse to Riki's cell. When Riki didn't respond to their taunts, the cyborg entered the cell with his men. As soon as Riki saw the dead body of the man who had helped him, rage exploded inside him. He attacked the cyborg, beating him viciously. The cyborg barely escaped with his life, but the other prisoners caught him and continued the beating until he was nearly dead. Before long, full-scale riots broke out between the guards and the inmates. Chaos spread throughout the entire prison. Meanwhile, the warden, unaware of what was happening, was conducting an inspection. During it, he overheard a prisoner saying something bad about his son. Enraged, he chopped off the prisoner's hands, declaring, "Let this be a lesson to anyone who dares speak against me again." Just then, Riki appeared. The warden fired a special kind of bullet that exploded once it entered the body. Riki grabbed the cyborg and used him as a shield. The bullets ripped through the cyborg and detonated inside him. Now Riki stood alone, fighting them all. Wong attacked him relentlessly, but Riki countered by breaking her legs. Another captain saw what happened and tried to flee, but the warden himself killed him on the spot. Finally, it was Riki versus the warden. Riki punched him hard, sending him flying across the room, but the warden didn't even have a scratch. Then, the warden revealed his true form. He transformed into a giant monster, showing that he too had superpowers like Riki, though he could only use them in this grotesque state. Riki punched straight through the warden's stomach, his fist going clean through his body, but the warden didn't flinch. The brutal fight continued, and Riki was getting weaker and weaker. Then he remembered his uncle's words, asterisk, "Every monster has a weakness. Find it and strike there." Asterisk. Riki's eyes fell on a massive meat grinder nearby. Seizing the moment, he lifted the warden and hurled him into it. The machine started tearing his body apart, grinding his flesh to pieces, but even then, the warden refused to die. He tried to pull Riki into the grinder with him. The entire room turned red with blood, but Riki didn't let go. Summoning every last ounce of strength, he pushed the warden all the way in. In the end, only the warden's severed head remained. Riki picked it up and walked out. Meanwhile, guards and prisoners were still fighting each other. Riki faced them and shouted, "The warden is dead. You're all free now." Finally, Finally, Riki punched through the prison walls, shattering them completely and creating an escape route for everyone. And with that, the movie comes to an end.